Like and subscribe right now, or you're gonna have terrible luck for the next week. Have you ever been to the scary depths of the ocean? Well, if you haven't, get ready to be shocked. On today's episode of 100M, we'll be taking you on a tour of the sea and the most terrifying monsters to ever swim in it. Number 10. Dunkleosteus. What would you call a fish with an armored body and the strongest bite force of any fish ever discovered? Would you call such a being a regular fish or something scarier? Something so depraved that it's cursed to lurk in the darkness and depths of the sea for all eternity? Well, before you get carried away by imagination, such an animal exists, and its name is the Dunkleosteus. This ancient-looking fish that looks scarier than anything in the water today lived about 400 million years ago. And what were humans doing 400 million years ago? Nothing. We hadn't evolved yet. Despite living more than 400 million years ago, this monster of a fish has managed to retain part of its body shape. So what makes this animal so ridiculously scary? Well, two things. Thing number one is its appearance. Imagine the Thing from Fantastic Four. Now imagine the Thing as a fish. Scary, right? Well, that's exactly what this bad boy looked like. Furthermore, this beast of a fish had a bite force that was much greater than that of any other fish. The fish had a bite force that nearly rivaled that of the T-Rex. Yes, the 50-foot-long gigantic monster. That T-Rex. Number 9. Leopleuridon. Generally speaking, you don't want to encounter large things in the water. Even the blue whale, an animal that doesn't fancy eating human beings, would be scary to approach in water. Talk less of the Leopleuridon, a gigantic, bloodthirsty sea creature. The Leo is a giant marine creature and was one of the scariest animals of the Jurassic era. It could grow up to an astonishing and frankly amazing 30 feet, and it had huge teeth that would have torn most marine life apart. When you see an animal like this, you probably think, oh well, it may be large, huge, scary, and all of that, but it might not swim very fast, so would have a hard time catching a fast swimmer. Well, if you thought that, you would be extraordinarily wrong. Despite its size, the Leopleuridon was a surprisingly fast swimmer. Aside from this, it also had an amazing sense of smell, which it used to locate prey. Does Leopleuridon sound very scary? Of course it does, but get this, the Leopleuridon wasn't even the scariest animal in its class. That title goes to the simply ridiculous Kronosaurus. Number 8. Kronosaurus. The Kronosaurus was a huge reptile that existed around the early Cretaceous period, which ended about 100 million years ago. It was also among the largest animals in its class and was a force to be reckoned with. It's little wonder the animal was named after the leader of the Greek Titans, because it was the leader of its class of animals too, at least in size and sheer fearsomeness. Like the other animals of its class, the Kronosaurus was a marine reptile. It had a short neck, an elongated head, and a stiff body that was propelled by 4 powerful and strong flippers. As you'd expect of an animal of this size, the Kronosaurus was carnivorous, and it had large, long, sharp conical teeth that helped it tear through animals. Number 7. Jacolopterus. Generally speaking, scorpions are extremely scary animals. Seriously, have you ever seen one? You probably recoiled in fear and shock. They're even scarier than snakes to some extent. Everyone knows that the sting of a scorpion is something you should never get. All this true, even though the biggest scorpions barely reach 10 inches. Now imagine a scorpion that was about the size of a full-sized human. Wouldn't that be scary in a whole different way and on an entirely different level? Of course it would be. And that's precisely why the Jacolopterus made this list. This weird and scary-looking creature ruled its corner of the waters as the apex predator about 400 million years ago. Despite probably being the smallest animal on this list, the Jacolopterus was a terrifying monster. It grew to about 8 feet long, and it had long spiked claws that would have been very useful in ensnaring any animal that came close to it. In case you're wondering, the Jacolopterus is the largest discovered species of arthropod, a group that includes insects, arachnids, lobsters, and crabs. Number 6. Mosasaurus. What would you call a 49-foot-long animal that sliced its meal whole and ate with reckless abandon? Would you call it a friendly giant or a terrifying monster? Well, there's a third option. You call it the Mosasaurus. When the movie Jurassic World gave the legendary predator a part in it, people were amazed at the barbarity of the animal. But the reality was far worse. These giant monsters could swallow their prey whole, but they simply chose not to. Instead, they tore up their prey with sharp, razor-like teeth, just because they could. Interestingly, these huge monsters breathed air just like modern dolphins. This tells researchers that they were originally land reptiles that adapted to water conditions. The Mosasaurus were so greatly adapted to their environment that they managed to give live birth to their young, instead of going back to the shore to lay eggs like sea turtles. The Mosasaurus had a body shape that was similar to that of a modern-day monitor lizard's. However, this body was more elongated and better adapted for swimming. Despite having a body that must have been excellent for swimming, the Mosasaurus most likely lurked around the darkest parts of the sea and then pounced on passing prey, instead of chasing it about. Number 5. Leviton Melville. How scary do you think whales are? Well, you may think that whales aren't that scary, and you'd be correct. After all, they aren't known for eating and killing human beings. They just mind their own business and swim about for a bit and stay happy. Despite that, you'd surely not want to pick a fight with a whale. They can grow over 15 feet long and aren't anyone's playthings. Now imagine a prehistoric beast that was so large that it almost exclusively fed on whales. Have you imagined such an animal? Well, discard that imagination, you don't need it. Such an animal has already existed, and it's the fantastic beast called the Leviton Melville. If you think that the word Leviathan sounds a lot like Leviathan, you're not wrong. The Leviathan was so big and so scary that scientists had to name it after a legendary biblical sea monster. Amazingly, this animal lived only about 12 million years ago, which may sound like a lot of time, but it's very recent when it comes to the lifespan of the Earth. While the Leviathan was just about the size of your modern sperm whale, it didn't hunt like them at all. Instead of using suction to suck in prey, it did the exact opposite. It hit and tore at prey with reckless abandon, decimating them however it liked. Number 4. Plesiosaurus. When people talk about the Plesiosaurus, they're referring to a different species of the same class of animals. Now, not all Plesiosaurus are terrifying monsters of the sea. However, the one we'll be checking out right now isn't only a terrifying monster, it also happens to be one of the strangest sea creatures you'll ever see. This huge lumbering creature you see lived about 135 million years ago, and they served as the sole inspiration for the famous Loch Ness Monster. The anatomy of this creature is so strange that it had placed it right in the middle of a controversy in the scientific community. When Mary Anning, the famous paleontologist, discovered the bones of this creature, she was accused of forgery. Her colleagues simply couldn't believe that an animal with such weird anatomy could exist. But they were all wrong, and Anning was right. With time and the discovery of other fossils, proved her just right. Number 3. Titanoboa. You probably didn't expect to see a snake here, but as you're already starting to suspect, snakes also live in the water. And not only that, they can grow to really enormous lengths. This snake in particular is the Titanoboa, and it grew up to 42 feet long. It lived in the Paleocene epoch, and it most likely hunted the way regular crocodiles do. It stayed submerged at the edge of water bodies, waiting for the right moment to strike unsuspecting prey, and when it did, there was no way for the prey to escape. And the Titanoboa attacked animals in the same manner that boas of today do. It would strike out and wrap its long and muscular body around its prey, crushing it to death.
Now it's time for today's best pick.
Our best picture for today was sent in by a subscriber. If you come across a picture online and want to know more about it, you can send it in to us. Who knows, your picture might even feature in a future video. Number 2. Helicoprion. The Helicoprion is, without a doubt, the most confusing sea monster that we know of. Till date, scientists haven't exactly been able to pin down this part of its anatomy, its jaw. Yes, that's true, we don't know how the Helicoprion's jaw would have looked like, even though we have fossil remains of its jaw. But why is this monster so confusing? Well, it sported a bizarre-looking set of teeth. The fossils of this animal have been found containing sets of spiral teeth, and we've not been able to discover how these teeth would have possibly fit into the mouth of the animal. We've tried different ways of fitting it to make it take a semblance of normality, but we've not been able to do it. What we do know for sure about the Helicoprion is that it probably had to replace its teeth regularly. There are even some scientists who had said that the tooth spiral was not visible, but was inside the throat of the shark. What do you think? Is this probable? Let us know in the comments.
Before we move on, I've got a little challenge for you that'll take 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal. You just leave a like on this video, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, and you will get 25 years of amazing luck. Try it, it really works.
Number 1. Megalodon. First off, before we begin with other terrifying aspects of this beast, we have to consider its sheer size. It was more than 50 feet long, which is simply astounding if you think of it for any length of time. They had jaws that were wide enough for any full-grown person to walk through with relative ease. To put the size of the Megalodon in perspective, it would be instructive to note that the great white shark is just as big as the genitalia of a male Megalodon. Some scientists believe that whales could only reach the enormous sizes they reach now because of the extinction of the meg. According to them, if a predator like the meg still existed, whales wouldn't be able to grow very large. That's it guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to click on the like and subscribe buttons. Goodbye and remember to stay safe.